Hi guys, welcome to The Gateway, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. Happy happy Halloween in a couple of days. Tonight I'm broadcasting to you from the city of Boston. I was supposed to go to Salem today, but decided that everybody goes to Salem and I've been there probably a gazillion times, so haven't done that. Instead, I ventured out and walked the entire route of the Freedom Trail and explored some of the haunted history surrounding the important figures of America's Revolution. So I toured the harbor where the Boston Tea Party happened, and I looked out the bedroom window of Paul Revere's house and probably walked about half a dozen Puritan cemeteries. I have a lot to say about it, but I'll have to save that for another time because it could probably be a whole show. I have a special guest tonight. His name is Mike Ricksecker, and before I have him on, I have to brag a little bit about this guy. I'm just so truly impressed. He is seriously a talented author who has captured the audience with secrets surrounding shadow people, secrets of the universe, and even the mystery surrounding the pyramids of Egypt. Not only does he write about them, but he has also traveled all over the world in search of great mysteries about the human story. Like, how do we get here? And, is it just coincidence that all of the ancient cultures in the world have so many similarities, both in agriculture and religion? He's got a new book he released today, Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargate, Atlantis and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. Ancient cultures around the globe held secrets of harnessing the power of the earth, transversing the cosmos, and interacting with beings from other worlds, or perhaps other dimensions. This is a quote directly from Mike Ricksecker. Let's get him on here. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Krista. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, especially on this is book release day. So pretty amazing. I'm excited and looking forward to our conversation tonight.
Well, listen, I couldn't get your book to upload for some reason because I'm in this hotel. Could you please show the audience real quick?
Here it is, Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt.
And you can buy it at mikericksecker.com.
Yeah, you can go to my website. Whoop, that's going to fall down. You can go to my website, mikericksecker.com. I mean, the link is going to take you to Amazon, but it's available wherever books are sold, whether that's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, all over. So wherever your favorite outlet is, you will be able to find it. Yeah.
Well, I have to ask, just to get us started, can you talk a little bit about yourself and what led you into the paranormal field?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm an experiencer. Yeah, I had, and that's what my book, A Walk in the Shadows, is really about. Is those first experiences that I had with what we would call shadow people, and I had a pretty harrowing incident when I was about 8 years old. At least was harrowing at the time. And over the years, I came to find out, more about these entities through my research, other experiences that I had. I was doing paranormal investigations, and I even had a hypnosis session about what had happened to me when I was younger. So that was really kind of my gateway into that. And then when it comes to this particular book in ancient Egypt and some of those more esoteric secrets and the like lost civilizations and that sort of thing, that was really, so I was a young airman in the Air Force, 1993 at Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. And all of a sudden on television one night, there was this very interesting special called Mysteries of the Sphinx. Charlton Heston was the host for that. And it featured the work of John Anthony West and Robert Schoch in the redating of the Sphinx. And I was totally fascinated by this new concept. And then it was the following year, 1994, that the movie Stargate came out. I was just totally blown away. Like, wow, there's really some interesting things going on here in Egypt. And of course, I already kind of had an inkling toward that with the Indiana Jones movies and that sort of thing. So, so that was always a part of my research in the background as I was doing more of the, paranormal investigations and that sort of work. And then along the way, I was just like, these two things really come together. And that's where, over the last I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. A lot of that work is kind of combined and come to fruition in what I call the Connecting the Universe series.
A lot of people, when they think of the paranormal, they only think of ghosts.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
there's all these seems to be different silos. Like you have the werewolf people. I've said this on another show. You have the alien people. You have, I don't know, the contactees, whatever you want to call them. How do they all relate?
Well, I mean, everything's connected. Everything in the universe is connected to each other. There's some sort of relationship between all of this different phenomena. I mean, when it comes down to it, and this is stuff that even Nikola Tesla talked about, a guy who he's known for his inventions, but he used to astral project when he was younger, so he was very much in touch with the metaphysical plane. But he even talked about everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, and vibration. So, and all of those things are connected to each other. So when we are talking, whether it's a ghost, whether maybe it's a Sasquatch, interdimensional being, shadow person. Shadow people can be all kinds of different things. ETs, even us, we're all connected to each other, and it's just a matter of trying to figure out what those connections are
and how they overlap, right?
Yeah.
I know Tesla, one of my favorite things that he tried to do was he thought that thoughts were material things or could be material things. So he designed this entire experiment where he was trying to photograph thoughts. I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah. The idea that you could actually photograph a thought or really like capture the energy as if it could, possibly manifest. And, he was onto a lot of different things here. So when kind of that era of inventors and scholars and, really our intelligent guys of that era, him, Einstein, these sorts of guys, they would conduct what they called thought experiments. And really, it was just kind of like sitting down and going into a sort of meditative state and thinking about, different problems, different ideas, different concepts. And they would work these things out in their mind. And really what they were doing was they were connecting into, there's a lot of different names for it, whether you want to call it the collective unconscious, what Carl Jung talked about. Some people call it the Akashic records. I call it eternal knowledge, just, knowledge of the universe that is there for us to tap into and download and bring that forth in our world today. And Tesla was downloading things and talking about concepts and ideas that were 100, 150 years ahead of his time.
So ancient Egypt, do you believe that the ancient people of Egypt was using kind of the same concepts?
Yeah, I mean, cultures all over the world were. They had a profound knowledge of the earth. They were much more in tune with what was going on with the earth's energy. We've kind of become separated from that in our modern culture. We're so busy in our lives. We have so much technology. Even the idea that we're wearing shoes that have the nice, and they're nice and comfortable, right? But they have that rubber insulation that basically insulates us away from the energy of the earth. And those ancient peoples had a much profound knowledge and connection to all of that. So when we look at like stone circles around the world, when we look at the pyramids, they were actually harnessing the energy of the earth for different purposes. And our science today has shown that yes, these different structures are actually harnessing energy from the earth. And I do cover those different concepts in Portals to the Stars.
It's really interesting. Now, you've been to Egypt, right?
Yeah, 3 times.
Can you talk a little bit about your trips and what you've learned?
Oh my gosh.
I know that could take up an entire
how much
show,
time do we have here? Yeah, because I do cover a lot of that within the book. But I was always interested in the idea of Stargates. And the first tour that I went on in Egypt actually had nothing to do with Stargates. It was the Return of the Kepler Cycle tour. And the idea here was to enter into the Great Pyramid of Giza on the summer solstice as the sun was rising, as the new cycle was starting on that day, the Kepler cycle. And so that was our main focus of that tour. But there's so much that we covered in Stargate technology that it's actually all over Egypt. We see it everywhere. So it's really hidden in plain sight. And so on that tour, the guide, Egyptologist Mohammed Ibrahim, and I got to talking, and he said, I want to do tours with you. I like the way you think. So it's like, okay, what's our tour going to be? And so Stargates of Ancient Egypt is what it became. So the last couple tours that we've conducted together out there have had that primary focus of, here are the different Stargates. Here's what the ancient Egyptians were using that for. Here's what they were using the energy for. And again, it's all hidden in plain sight. And so I bring some of that to light in the book, but you can only tell so much in a book or in a documentary or a video or something like that. It's so much different when you actually go there and experience it for yourself. So we are hosting again another Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour next year.
What exactly is a Stargate? I have to ask. Some people may not know.
Yeah, so Stargates and portals, are related in the sense that they are passageways to other places. It could be another place in the cosmos, could be to another place here on Earth, could be to another dimension, could be to another point in time. Portals are naturally occurring in the world, out in space, out in the wilderness. And like we have, it's interesting because NASA has recognized that, yes, we have portals right outside the planet, and they call them X points. They've recognized that they're portals, but we're not going to call them portals. We're going to call them these X points. But it's really where the Earth's magnetosphere and the solar winds clash into each other. And even though they've had satellites up there for like 9 years, almost 10 now, they have no predictive model for when they're going to open, how long they're going to be open for, how big they open up to. But these are portals, and these particular portals allow like the solar wind to hit the Earth faster. But we have these sorts of things occurring like out in the wilderness, in the air. We've had airplanes disappear through them. We've had people disappear through them out in the wilderness. Some people believe other entities like Sasquatch and fairies and things like this are using them. So what a Stargate is really an intelligent being that has harnessed that sort of natural phenomena of a portal, and they are able to basically use it at their will. So they're able to harness that energy, harness that ability to be able to open up when they want, to be able to go to where they want, and these sorts of things.
I know there's another guy, Lester Crowley, who he traveled to Egypt for that very purpose. Mm-hmm. He was trying to, and I really don't know the whole story. He stayed the night apparently and came up with an entire religion. And he says that he contacted spirits from another world or something through a portal through ancient Egypt. What about ancient Egypt that everybody is picking up on that feel this way?
Yeah, it's one of the oldest civilizations in the entire world. So there's a lot of old energy there. And, again, these ancient peoples were, much more in tune to the world around them, much more in tune to the universe. So they were able to establish a culture there that used this energy. They constructed these rooms that, were Stargate rooms. They were ingesting material, these white cakes that a lot of people believe were made of monatomic white gold, and entering into these different altered states of consciousness to be able to contact these different beings. So there's a lot of old knowledge there that when we get into the texts, they reveal a lot about the nature of our universe. It's really been forgotten to time.
Is there a particular place that you can talk about that you wrote about and been to?
There's a lot. Because we find these Stargates all over. Specifically with Egypt, we're talking like Abydos, Dendera, Karnak, Luxor. Hatshepsut's temple is like a prime example of a Stargate, because you have that the symbolism all over the temple, specifically like the staircase going up back into the Holy of Holies, which has that representation of the snakes. And the snake is, or the serpent is the ancient symbol for energy. In fact, the Dragon Project back in the 1970s and 80s, which was a group of scientists coming together to study Earth energy at like stone circles and things like this, they called themselves the Dragon Project after the Chinese geomancers who believed that the dragon was representative of Earth energy. So you see this like going back up into the Holy of Holies at Hatshepsut's temple. You've got the ruins of a pyramid off to the side. So, something that was there to harness the earth energy. And then you have the hieroglyphs of the different gateways going back into the temple that actually spell out Stargate as you go back into the courtyard, into the Bark Hall, which the Bark Hall is the transformation for the gods, and then back into the Holy of Holies. And back there you have this off on the one wall on the side. It's the only place where you find it in Egypt, at least that we know of to this point, where it's a cartouche full of stars. So it's like the ultimate symbolism of the Stargate. So it's a fantastic setup.
You mentioned the snake thing, and that's really interesting to me because we're going to get into some other cultures as well. But that snake, it transverses into Greek mythology. We use it for modern medicine. It's a major symbol for medicine. You see it with ancient Native Americans all over. How do people use that symbol now in the modern world?
Yeah, unfortunately, the snake has been demonized, and it was the creature that tempted Adam and Eve, right? So,
right.
So it's really been demonized in that sort of context, but that's never what the snake was supposed to be for. Like you said, it's still a symbol in our modern medicine, for healing. We see it, our oldest alchemical symbol, which is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. And all that is doing, that's representing the constant recycling and renewal of, whether it's a person's life, it could be other life here on Earth, the Earth itself, the universe itself. So it's like this universal symbol of constant recycle and renewal. And then again, of course, the Earth energy, to talk about like the serpentine lines of energy that course through the earth. So unfortunately, the snake has been demonized in modern days.
Do you know, is there any records anywhere of how ancient Egypt was using these energies? Were they using, I think I saw a documentary somewhere where they were using, the theory was they were using energy to move those heavy stones to make the pyramids.
Well,
Yeah.
So any of that is going to be speculation. I mean, it makes more sense than trying to stick these huge, massive blocks on wooden rollers, or building this huge. I mean, to build a ramp like that, it would have to stretch for like miles. It's insane. It just wasn't feasible to do that. And now you have, oh my gosh, some of the images, AI images that have come out have, hey, it's funny, here's a photograph from when they built the pyramids, and you have like 20 guys with this massive block that they're holding up like this. It's like, really? So yeah, one of the ideas is that they were using some sort of energy, maybe even sound energy, maybe magnetics or something like this, to be able to move those massive stone blocks. So any of those ideas, I mean, people debate today. The honest answer is we just don't know. In modern attempts to try to do the same thing, like there was a team from Japan that tried to even just build a smaller replica of the Great Pyramid, couldn't do it. They had to like bail out and make it, keep making the project smaller and smaller and smaller, because they just couldn't do it. It was too much work.
So we see pyramids though all over the world. Not maybe in that kind of a scale, but they are in the Mayan culture. The mounds in the US, the mound people, that's kind of like a pyramid almost.
Well,
What
it
were
is,
they
yeah.
doing with these structures?
Yeah, Cahokia is considered the Monk's Mound is considered the largest pyramid north of Mesoamerica. So it is actually a smaller pyramid. Um, yeah, I mean, ancient cultures had different functions for what they were using these for, whether it was some sort of ceremonial purpose. Now, with ancient Egypt, this is another one that comes into contention because the traditional narrative is that, oh yeah, the Great Pyramid of Giza was a tomb for Khufu. Well, there was never any bodies found, within that pyramid, and even attributing it to Khufu, that attribution is very, very sketchy because uh, there are no hieroglyphs within the pyramid. Aside from in this one little, it's above the king's chamber. You kind of have to crawl in there, and there's like this red little painting of a cartouche. And many people believe it was a forgery by Howard Weiss because he was commissioned. He was hired to go to the Great Pyramid, discover some secrets, to find some treasure, find some definitive proof of when it was built. And he couldn't find it because there's nothing there. There's nothing written there, and everything is bare. And so many people believe that he just
Made a bunch
painted
of
that
stuff.
on there himself. Yeah, it was a forgery. So yeah, there's an idea that Great Pyramid of Giza was a power plant, and I looking at it myself, I believe it was some sort of machine, maybe Christopher Dunn has a lot of wonderful ideas there, and I can understand where he has put those ideas together, like with the Queen's Chamber being a chemical reaction chamber. Well, there's salt on the walls for some reason. There's a corbelled niche that's back there that for one has been burnt and charred, and the stone has been vitrified and melted. To me, that's a smoking gun that this was some sort of machine and not a tomb. But if it was harnessing the energy, okay, what are they going to be using the energy for? They're not, we have light bulbs and things around us right now. They're not lighting up their homes with it. The most important thing to the ancient Egyptians was the Nile inundation season. So this came about during the summertime, where the Nile River flooded and brought down rich black soil to enrich the land so they could grow their crops. And the crops were very, very important to ancient Egypt because outside of the Nile River, you had desert. So, you can only live on 7% of the land of Egypt. So growing crops was very, very important to them. So what I believe that they were using this energy for were two things. One, to help enhance their crops so they could have a greater output. They could have bigger crops and they could have a bigger output. And we do this sort of thing today with our genetically, modified. So we don't like doing because that uses chemicals, but this was like a more natural way to do it. We're going to bring earth energy into the crops and make a bigger harvest. But then I also believe it was raising the consciousness of the people as well. So you had a happier civilization and you had bigger crops, and that just made for a happier nation.
Do you think that they were actually contacting spirits from another world, such as aliens or anything?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call them aliens. So they had their their belief system. We, in our modern context, call them gods. The ancient Egyptian called them neters. That was their word for it, which really means like a force of nature. So when we talk about like Thoth, so he was supposed to be like a god of knowledge. Well, really, he was like the knowledge of the universe, bringing that knowledge with him. Or you had like Neith, who was a creation goddess. Well, she was really like the force that created the world, especially after the Great Cataclysm. So in those stories themselves, and there's a whole section in there on Atlantis, because we find the Atlantis story there at the Edfu Temple. And so this is where those beings, the Neters and the Shining Ones, what actually they called the primeval ones, when that Great Cataclysm occurred, that they rebuilt civilization in Egypt.
Have our scientists today been successful in creating wormholes in the lab? Is that kind of what they were doing is that what you believe they were doing in the pyramids?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know about in, okay, so not necessarily in the pyramids. In the temples, that's actually where you find a lot of the Stargate symbolism is in the temples, not necessarily the pyramids. It's like the pyramids were helping to harness energy, at some of those temples. Like the pyramids at Giza are really away from some of the bigger temples. But at those bigger temples like Elephantina Island, Hatshepsut's temple, you find some smaller pyramids there that were essentially like harnessing energy to power them. In today's day and age, a couple of years ago now, there was an interesting experiment that was done at Fermilab, where they had created what they called a small wormhole in the lab, basically on the quantum level. So what they did is they created two very small black holes that connected them with a tunnel, and they sent a message through. And so they were like, hey, successfully, we created a wormhole. Again, very, very small. It was on the quantum level. It's just really, really the beginnings of this type of technology, but they were able to successfully do this. So it's like, in some ways, they are rediscovering technology from the past. It's just in a very different context and with a very different method than what they used back then in ancient times.
Is there anything with the military right now that say that something from the other side is using these wormholes to try to communicate with us?
Well, yeah, anything with the military is going to be very, very secretive. They're gonna hold on to that as much as they can. Having been in the military myself, so they are going to hold tight to those secrets until they absolutely have to. So when people are clamoring for disclosure, it's if they don't have to, they're not going to. So today we're getting a little bit of that information because everybody's running around with a high-powered camera in their pocket these days with their cell phones, and we're able to take some wonderful photos. We're able to take some wonderful video, much better than say 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, where everything was blurry. It might be a dark sky with a nice array of lights, and the military, the government could come up with any excuse they wanted to for what that stuff was, but they can't do that anymore. So so they have to admit something, right?
Right.
And so now they're saying, yeah, there are things that we can't explain, but they're going to try to control the narrative as much as they can. So, when it comes to whether it's ETs or Stargates or anything like that, the information that we're going to get out of the government is going to be pretty scant, or it's just going to be repetitive from things we already know, like as wonderful as it's been with the congressional hearings where, we're talking about, hey, there are things in the sky that we can't explain. Hey, there's like David Grush talking about there being, remains of craft that have crashed. Well, I mean, we've known about this forever. We've been talking about it since Roswell and even before then. So it's not really new to the community. But it is at least nice in a sense that because it is being talked about in Congress again, it is being written into the official record. People like us are being considered less and less crackpots, like we used to be.
Right, that's true. Especially around the Vegas area, there is a lot of different sightings and things. But I always contributed to there's a drone military base there, and I forget the name of it. There's several big ones around Area 51, and one of them is specifically for those giant drones that go overseas, flying those. And you can see them at night sometimes from the highway. If you drive out, you'll see them do the touch landings, like they touch them down and then they pick them up. And these things are huge, and they look triangular. So now, seeing that firsthand, when people start to talk about these things, that's what I attribute it to. Well, is it one of those drones? Is it a military thing?
Right. Well, yeah, and that's how we, found out about the stealth bomber. People for a while thought they were UFOs, and it's like, oh, well, no, here it was a secret, military program. And we still have those. So, it's going to be one of the reasons why the government's going to be reluctant to talk about some of these things. And they're going to deny. Some of these things are actually, things that our government is playing around with. But then there are other things that they're not, so,
Right.
so it makes it a little bit hard. And there are times where you can call up, you might see something in the sky, you can call up your local, Air Force base or whatever and be like, hey, were you guys running some flights over there? And they might tell you, yes, we were. But when they say, no, we weren't, then you're wondering, okay, were they really not running anything? Or were they just saying they weren't, but they really were?
Was there anybody else that's credible that says that beings from other worlds are trying to communicate with us using stargates or wormholes or anything like that?
Well, so here's the thing. Beings from other worlds, many of them, not all, but many of them are going to have like billions of years ahead of us in technology, right? We are relatively young compared to the rest of the universe. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, where the universe is almost 14 billion years old. And actually, there was a report that came out. It was some new research that came out here a couple weeks ago where they were saying, well, the universe might actually be 27 billion years old, which would make us even younger compared to the rest of the universe. So these other civilizations around the universe have had much, much longer periods of time to develop technology. Some of these may have figured out how to, construct their own Einstein-Rosen bridge. Of course, beings on another world wouldn't call it an Einstein-Rosen bridge. They would call it something else. But essentially, your wormhole, the ability to fold over space and time and connect those 2 points with a tunnel, and being able to traverse across long spans of the cosmos. And so, yeah, other civilizations could be using that sort of technology to get here, visit Earth, that sort of thing. Some of these different ideas of there being, I kind of chuckle at it because we had like the Harvard research team came out in this past summer saying, well, there's some evidence or some research shows that there may be extraterrestrials living alongside of us in another dimension. And I'm kind of chuckling at that, like, if these are beings that are living alongside of us here on Earth, but they're in another dimension, they're not extraterrestrials. They're actually Earthlings. There's another term for them that would ultra terrestrial. So that was a term that like John Keel and some others back in like the 60s came up with, which makes a little bit more sense. Something in another dimension living alongside of us here on Earth. And that could be very well be a number of these different beings and entities that we see, whether that's like a shadow being, sometimes when we see these mists and wisps, or some people talk about seeing a shimmer type person, some of these things that we actually think are ghosts and that sort of stuff, may actually be something that's just in another dimension, in another plane of existence alongside of us. And we're just getting a quick glimpse of them.
That's an interesting concept. I'm actually speechless on that, especially that it came out of Harvard, of all places.
Yeah.
A Harvard study.
Yeah, there were, I think, 4 people on that research team. They call it the Harvard research thing because like 3 of them are from Harvard, but actually one of them was from Montana. So let's give that guy a little credit.
Does that have anything to do with the Skinwalker Ranch, you think?
So with Skinwalker Ranch, you have a lot of interesting activity going on there where, UFOs, UAPs, you've had the, paranormal activity, shadow people, cryptid sightings, all of this stuff. And
it's
so
like a ball of everything.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of everything going on. And when they've done their testing out there, the research, they've got like that, what they call the triangle area, and all kinds of strange electromagnetic anomalies. The LiDAR shows basically like this gaping hole that's there's all this strange stuff. And a lot of people think that there's like a UFO buried under the mesa or something like that. So this is an area that's kind of considered a quote unquote hotspot area for activity. And we have other hotspot areas like this across the globe, like the Bermuda Triangle, the Alaska Triangle. You've got Ivan T. Sanderson's idea of the vile vortices, all of these different things. Of course, the Giza Plateau is one of those hotspots, a lot of the stone circles like Stonehenge and these sorts of things around the world. But really what's happening here, they are hotspots because it all starts at the Earth's core, which is a molten ball of iron that's spinning around and around and around, creating a very strong magnetic field, which is a good thing because that protects us from the solar wind. Otherwise, if we didn't have that, we'd get fried. But as that magnetism is rising up out of core, it passes through the Earth's mantle, passes through the Earth's crust, it's interacting with different metals and minerals. And depending on what that metal is and how big the deposit is going to create these more localized electromagnetic fields. And these are what ends up becoming our hotspot areas. So, and they're measurable, like up in Alaska, back in the 60s, they conducted a magnetic survey there of about 100,000 square miles, which Alaska's huge, it's like 630 some odd thousand square miles. But of the 100,000 square miles that they surveyed, they classified what they called 5 different magnetic characters. And within those different magnetic characters, there were some of these things that they considered to be negative anomalies. So, they're very well aware of these areas of the Earth that have this strange electromagnetism that's involved with it. So when it comes to a place like Skinwalker, to me, it's something that's in the ground there. People saying, "Oh, it's a UFO in the maze." Oh, okay, maybe, but to me, the better money would be on electromagnetism rising up from the Earth, and there's some sort of deposit that's there. It could even be like an ancient meteorite, some meteor that crashed into Earth millions of years ago. That as that magnetism's passing through the Earth, it's running into this large object with could be iridium, could be nickel, whatever is in that thing, that is creating these other a much more localized electromagnetic field that's creating this strange phenomena to occur.
That's a really interesting thought. But when it comes down to like the Bermuda Triangle, and I think another spot would be the forest. What is that forest that goes through Tennessee? Gatlinburg?
Smoky Mountains?
Yeah, the Smoky Mountains, where a ton of people have just disappeared from up there. Yeah. So they think that's another hotspot. These are places where people just totally disappear.
Yeah.
Like they're just sucked up and gone. So where do they go?
Well, that's a great question. Where do they go? When I filmed for the television show, The Alaska Triangle, and I wrote about this, I wrote about that in my book, The Alaska Triangle. Even in this one, I brought it back up. We talked about some of these different missing airplanes and things like this. One of the ideas is that they have disappeared through some sort of portal. And for the Alaska Triangle television show, even though it was a Bermuda Triangle story, we brought on Bruce Gurdon to talk about his experiences there in the Alaska Triangle, or in the Bermuda Triangle, where he basically passed through this this tunnel. He called it an electronic fog, but it basically spiraled into a tunnel that he zipped through and ended up jumping like over a half an hour in time. So some of these other missing airplanes, maybe they're not as fortunate, and maybe the gap of time is much greater. And let's say something like so 1950, a Douglas Skymaster went missing with 44 people on board. Let's say that passed through some sort of portal. Sure, it could go to another dimension, could be cast out to somewhere else in the cosmos or whatever. But it could also go to another point in time. Well, let's just throw an arbitrary number out there and say, I went back 500 years in time. Okay. Well, what would an airplane look like to the indigenous peoples of the area 500 years ago? Because they would have no context of an airplane. They would relate this thing to a giant bird, very loud, thunderous in nature. So is this where some of the Thunderbird legends come from? Missing airplanes. As far as like people going missing out in the woods, a lot of people don't come back. We have no idea what happened to them at all. You could be walking next to your buddy and all of a sudden gone. Sometimes, though, they do come back. And some of the stories that they tell are really, really strange and fascinating. You'll hear stories of, hey, yeah, I was walking on the path out in the woods and I heard a noise off the side of the path. I took 2 steps out into the woods to see what it was. Couldn't figure out what the noise was. Turned around to get back on the path, and the path was gone. And now they're lost out in the woods. So, what exactly happened to them? Did they step into some sort of portal or something that maybe it took them to another place in the forest? Maybe it took them to another point in time in the forest. We don't know, but it's like days later, they finally show back up, and that's the story they tell. It's really fascinating.
I wonder if there's any kind of connection between when somebody has an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience. They always describe that tunnel.
Yeah.
Go through. Is there any connection, you think?
Yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, that's, could be a connective point to what is that realm that's beyond? Is it one of our other dimensions? Because we have, up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. So is that the 5th, 6th, 7th? We're in the 4th, by the way, which is time. So is that, taking us to the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or is it even beyond, what we know of our universe, another connection to some other realm? We don't know, but that, very well could be that connection that we're making from this world to somewhere else.
Do Stargates, do they only provide a gateway to a location on Earth, or do they go to other places?
They can go to some place on Earth. They could go to some place out in the cosmos. They could go to some other dimension. They could go to another point in time. So it varies.
All of these beings, like I keep asking, I guess maybe, I don't know, like what is your opinion on what are these other beings? Are they extensions of us? Do we go there when we die? What are they?
Good question. I mean, some of them, some of them are not human. They're not us. Some of these beings, like, you hear these like origin stories from the American Southwest of the ant people. Well, I don't look like an ant, or like they call, the mantoids and these sorts of things. But, there are these origin stories. And so I've done some work there in the Verde Valley, Montezuma as well. I include this in the book as well. And those origin stories of talk about the great cataclysm. It's it's almost the same story that we find all over the world, that there was a great flood, great cataclysm, some sort of disaster happened, and most of the people died, and there were a handful of survivors. Well, in this particular story, and this was passed down through the source that I heard it from was Clifford Mahudi, a Zuni elder, passed away a couple years ago. That they're at the Verde Valley, Montezuma's well, which traditional science says, well, it's just a giant sinkhole, but we really don't know what's at the bottom because there's so much pressure coming up from below. Nobody's been able to dive it. They can't send a probe down. Everything gets pushed back up. So they don't know what's down there. But the indigenous people talk about, when the great cataclysm happened, there were these, what they called the ant people or the mantoids, whatever you want to call them. They saved us. We had these survivors that came from basically the Pacific. They came from the West. And so some people say, well, maybe they were survivors of like Lemuria or Mu or something like that. Maybe. So we're kind of iffy on that part, but basically survivors of the cataclysm. And these ant people took them into their world, which, they said was at the bottom of Montezuma as well. So, you have this idea. So some people say, well, this is proof of like, hollow earth sort of thing, or, Montezuma as well as some sort of Stargate or portal that took them to this other realm, this other dimension, so that the human survivors, could actually survive while the cataclysm occurred. And then when everything kind of subsided, it calmed down, then they were kind of let back out, and they settled that area up and down the river there, and they have the cliff dwellings and the castle and all that sort of stuff. But there's some interesting origin stories that include other realms, other dimensions, other beings that are different from us.
I know the Hopi has one about they lived in the ground before and then they came up. That's their creation story. They came out from the
Yeah, kind
ground.
of similar. Yeah.
Can we find symbolism around the world that links all the stargates? And I think this is in your book. It's a pattern, the spiral that's used all
Yeah.
over the place, especially in spirituality. You see that spiral. But you
Mhm.
also see it in life, like almost everything that grows in a spiral. If you notice, like snail shells, turtle shells, everything kind of
Yeah, the Nautilus
spiraling.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so that's 5. That's like the divine number. The spiral pattern that we're talking about here, yeah, we find it all over. We find it in ancient Egypt, we find it in Sardinia, we find it in Ireland, we find it in the American Southwest. It's everywhere. All these cultures that had no connection to each other, and the indigenous people tell us that, well, these were the portals that the star people use. Like you go to Chaco Canyon, right there on the wall, here's the star people using the portals. Or Petroglyph National Monument, Boca Negra. There's a wonderful depiction there. If you're going along you have the mesa, there's all kinds of petroglyphs up there, including some of the spirals. But then there's this wonderful one along the one cliff is basically as you're driving out, there it is. And at the bottom of the trail are these star peoples. Like literally, there's a star that's got a face and he's got legs and everything with a couple other beings. And then you have, as you're climbing, it's not that long, it's maybe like 20 feet. And as you're going up a little bit more, there's the snake, your representation of energy. And you go up a little bit more, and boom, there's a spiral, there's your portal. And it's like very simply laid out. Star people using the energy to enter the portal. The whole way it's going up. It's like, okay, this makes complete sense, right? But you see that symbolism all over the world telling the same story. So all of these cultures were connected together, even though our traditional science, and to me, it's almost laughable. We know better. Those. I find it offensive. Like, we're not going to listen to the indigenous people. These are the people that, descendants of the people that created these symbols. And they're the ones saying that these are portals. But, our traditional academia say, no. Those are, well, they have a couple of different excuses, like migration patterns or symbols of water. It's like, well, migration pattern. Who in the world's migrating in a spiral? That wouldn't get you very far very quickly. Usually it's like, we need to migrate that way for the season, so we go. We don't go around. I mean, spirals are a great way to do like crime scene investigation. It's very thorough. Migrating, no. As far as like water, well, the symbol in the ancient world for water was the wavy, jagged line, and that's another symbol that we find all over the world for water, is that that
usually
that
in
jagged,
threes
wavy line.
too. It's
Yeah,
usually in threes
yeah.
for some reason.
So yeah, and even like ancient Egypt, that's their letter N. It's representative of water, but it's also their letter N. So yeah, the spirals are representative. Of course, I'm going to listen to the indigenous people. They're the ones that created the symbol.
Now, you've been to Chaco Canyon. Can you talk about your experience there?
Yeah, Chaco
It's
Canyon.
my
I've been there
dream
a couple
to go
times.
there. I want to go and camp there summer.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place. I absolutely love it. Because you're really free to just explore. There's a couple of locations where they say, don't go beyond, here, but like, you go to Pueblo Bonito, and probably like 90% of it is open for you to run around in and explore. And like, you can't get down into the Great Kiva, but you walk all alongside of it and look down. Some fantastic petroglyphs there. Oh my gosh, Quetzalcoatl is another set of ruins that you can explore. Well, there's actually several ruins that you can explore there. And what's fascinating to me about it is that when we think of ancient ruins, we're thinking ancient Egypt, Greece, places like this in other parts of the world. But we actually do have some ancient ruins like that here in America that we can go visit. And Chaco Canyon is absolutely wonderful to just explore.
For those that don't know, Chaco Canyon, I think that might be the largest Native American ruin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's in New Mexico, the northwest section of New Mexico. It's It's an adventure to get to because it's like a 20-mile dirt road to get there, but it's totally worth it. And if you are into astronomy, it's one of those areas where it's just dark sky country. They actually have a little observatory there where you can stay late at night and look at the stars at the observatory.
So some of the legends that surround that place are just incredible. Like they believe that there's one theory that they believe that they were using it as wonders the trade. They thought it was like a merchant's trade where they would all converge and trade stuff. But the other one was they thought it was a big spiritual celebration of some sort where they were trying to do ceremonial things to try to raise their vibrations to reach that other energy that you were talking about. Is that what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole location is astronomically aligned. Again, you have the petroglyphs there telling the story of the star people that were using the portals to come to that area. And then the kivas, I mean, they don't know exactly what ceremonies they were conducting, but they do know that they were conducting ceremony there. And there are each of these great houses had at least one giant kiva, and then they had some smaller ones as well they were used for ceremony. We just don't know precisely what that ceremony was.
Well, Mike, can you put your book back up there? I need to brag on this book some more.
There we go.
There it is. You guys, you can buy it on Amazon. Yep. It just came out today. Be sure to get your book. You can find it on Amazon. If you don't want to go to Amazon, it's MikeRicksecker.com. I highly recommend visiting his website. He's got a lot of great stuff up there. So, Mike, can you believe we're just about out of time already?
Yeah, it flew by pretty quick.
Did I miss anything about your book? I didn't get to read it yet. I'm going to download it today and read it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there. Because we do talk about like the portals in the wilderness, get into some stories about Sasquatch. I have a number of people that help chime in on a lot of these sorts of things. So like when it comes to Sasquatch, Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot chimed in on that. Hoyle Baciu Forest is another area that I explore in that. And so if people are familiar with Amy Wayne from Amy's Crypt, she's been out there a few times, so she chimed in on that. I actually have a QHHT healer from Scotland, Catherine Swin. So she provided one of her sessions that explored the usage of some of these different portals. And then she was kind of like my eyes at some of these different locations out in the UK, like the Rollright Stones, Avebury. So she was going to those locations for me. And then Dr. Heather Lynn, who's she's known as the renegade archaeologist. So she provided some insight when I got into like the stories of Atlantis, which talk about the Shining Ones. So she chimed in on the Shining Ones from like ancient Sumer, ancient Mesopotamia, and that part of the world. So there's a lot of great insight from other experts that chimed in on the book as well.
You know, with all of this information that's coming out, that we're learning more and more, and there is a lot of overlap once you start connecting all the different silos in the paranormal. What do we do with this information, and how can we use it? Is it going to make us a happier society? Is it going to make us better people? Like, what happens?
Well, I mean, that's my hope that, it's this type of information is helping to raise the consciousness of humanity, that we're able to take this information and really get back in tune with the universe, get back in touch with the planet, with the energy that's here, but also expanding out into the universe and raise our consciousness. I think a lot of times we get really kind of too busy with life. We have things like television, social media that are just really kind of bearing down on us, especially right now during election season. Oh my God, you turn on the television and it's just all these mud slinging commercials, which is absurd. And that brings down the energy, that brings down our human consciousness. So it's my hope that books like this are enlightening and help people to really, just become more free and more open, share their own experiences, but also, become more in tune with the universe.
Do you have any paracons or anything coming up that you're doing?
Yeah, I have a lot of things coming up at the beginning of next year. Conscious Life Expo out in Los Angeles. I have the Missouri Paracon in Kansas City, Haunt-Lanta, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, Lone Star Paracon, which is in San Antonio. And then later on next May is Parapsychon, which I do every year. And April 5th, I have a Portals to the Star special event that we're doing in New Jersey. So you can find all that information on my website in the events and tours page. So and I have the Stargate of Ancient Egypt tour that's also coming up next year, 2025. And so yeah, just keep.
Do you have any spots open on that one?
Yeah, there's still spots open. Come on along.
I already signed up. I'm coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you want, just sign up for my newsletter. I think you have.
I have, yes.
Sign up for my newsletter.
You've got a podcast too, don't you?
Yeah, Connecting the Universe podcast every Wednesday night. So I'll be talking more about this book tomorrow night on my own show, and then I have my blog too on Substack. So yeah, I'm kind of everywhere.
Well, Mike, it's been such an honor to have you on my show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal. This was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And there you have it. That's Mike Ricksecker. I love that guy. He's so smart, isn't he? So you've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to dawn, explaining the mystical and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. So you guys, I will not be on next week. Next week, the show falls on election night. Everything's been canceled. We're not allowed to run the show, so because of the election. But stay tuned for the following week. I'll be back with a new show. I'll be off the road finally. Well, almost. I'm done for the 10th, and then I'm going to be around for the rest of the year. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Until next time.